Hi everyone, in this video I'll reflect on my first 3 years in Canada. The 3-year anniversary was actually in September, but I was wrestling with how to go about this video without sounding too negative, but also not to just feed the people the good stuff and then they get a harsh reality check on arrival. Now firstly, my views are mine and mostly reflects on Vancouver, BC. There's also another South African YouTuber posting more frequently with older kids and from a different generation, which I would highly recommend visiting his channel to get a different viewpoint perhaps. They arrived shortly after us. In his videos he also gives very honest opinions. He also recently gave an update on his thoughts after 3 years. I haven't watched the video yet, so it doesn't influence my thoughts for this video, but I would highly recommend jumping to his channel. I'll try and throw a link somewhere, either up here or in the description. So 3 years in, I have to say it has been an emotional roller coaster with many challenges, but the third year was the closest to settled as we've been. Just to recap, in the first year we came over during the height of the pandemic with all the lockdowns, shutdowns, restrictions. It was extremely challenging. We also had the tragic and unexpected loss of my father-in-law, as well as friends, former colleagues and members of my life-saving fraternity. This brings me to one of the psychological challenges of being 23 to 30 hours of traveling from your loved ones in a time zone 9 to 10 hours behind. When someone gets sick or tragedy strikes, you simply can't be there at a moment's notice. It will be 2 to 3 days and $1,500 per person later. As one's parents and family members gets older, this is always something that is in the back of my mind. Weddings, funerals, major birthdays are all things that you might miss out on. And in the case of funerals, you struggle to find closure. Staying with the theme of the long distance, it is a very expensive journey for friends or family to visit you, and understandably, most probably won't, simply because they can't. Besides just the 4 days of traveling to and from Canada, for the average person from South Africa, the daily expenses in Canada are astronomical. So if you want to see your friends and family, your best bet would be to visit South Africa. That said, earning dollars and visiting home, you really can vacation like a king, with very affordable accommodation or even free when staying with family, and good food available at a steal in comparison with North America. The downside, however, depending on how much time you have off, you really have to move around quite a bit to see everyone. In our case, Johannesburg, Cape Town and Port Elizabeth, or as it's now known, Berga. I think I pronounced that correctly, Berga. It takes up a lot of time and energy, and after our last trip we decided next time around we'll find a base somewhere and friends and family can come visit us. If you have watched my previous vlogs, you would know that I've complained in the past about it being very difficult getting into some of the community programs like swimming lessons for my kid, etc. I can say that this has improved in the last year, and I've been able to get my kid into anything from swimming, tennis and skiing lessons. It is still a bit of a mad rush to get in, but it is way more attainable than 2 years ago. If you are used to private medical care in South Africa, the free medical care in Canada can be quite a headache, especially primary care, where you might need to wait days to see a doctor unless you go sit for a couple of hours at an urgent care center. Now, the reason I said free when I mentioned Canadian healthcare is this. Seeing a GP is free, or being taken up in hospital for medical procedures, those are all free services. And once you get in and you get seen, the treatment is really good and no expenses are saved. At least at the children's hospital I work, this has been my experience. So why did I say free? Well, a lot of things are not covered. Dentistry, for instance, and it is not cheap. Things like physiotherapy, and a very big miss in my opinion, psychologists, are also not included in the public healthcare system. Medication is also not, and all of these, as well as those not mentioned, can really add up to a big medical bill in a year. of which some you can reclaim from tax. Luckily, you do have the option of extended medical coverage for those things not covered, which essentially works like medical aid in South Africa. Just so the Canadians watching this can have some insight into the South African system. I don't like to talk about classes, but let's say the lower middle class and up in South Africa would typically have some form of medical aid for private medical care, with the lowest coverage typically being something like a hospital plan, which would cover any hospitalizations and sometimes a couple of GP visits as well. A typical plan will cover just about any medical care you might require, including over-the-counter medicines, as well as prescription medication. Depending on the plan you have, the amounts covered in different categories might differ. The care is also private and generally quite quick. You pick up the phone, you call your GP, and usually you have an appointment that same day, or they can squeeze you in somewhere. It is not a quick 5 to 10 minutes appointment. The appointment is as long as it needs to be. It can be up to half an hour. It can include a proper examination, a full checkup. All depends on what you book. You can also bypass the GP and go straight to a specialist when it is warranted. The government medical care deals with a large part of the population, and this results in similar issues to Canada, where there are long wait lists. The public school system is something to get used to. I kind of miss the government schools in South Africa with the uniforms and a bit stricter rules perhaps. To have a similar experience in Canada, you would have to put your kid in a private school, which would obviously not be free like the public schools here are. Another thing I miss from the school system back home is the competitive culture, whether it's academics or sports. At the start of the school year, which would be January in South Africa, summer months, usually by the second week there's already your first inter-house sports or athletics event, followed by swimming, and from grade 1 you're encouraged to compete in that, and one of the school teams wins. There's a winner, there's a loser, there's even a spirit cup. So I think it embeds a bit of a competitive nature. Compared to here, I find there's a more everybody's a winner mentality, which in real life isn't really how things work, unfortunately, my opinion. Even when it comes to academics, there are rewards for those performing above average. When you get your report cards, they typically show the class average, and you can obviously see your kid's mark and see if your kid is overachieving, staying with the rest of the group, or struggling a bit. Where here you struggle, it's difficult to gauge where your kid is in relation to the rest, and I know a lot of people would say it's probably not important and you shouldn't compare, but I think, in my opinion, it gives the kids something to aim for. Being a top achiever, let's say in writing, reading, math, whatever, it gives you something to aim at, and there's academic rewards at the end of the year, sport awards. I get it, the people that just don't have the ability, they lose out and miss out, and I think it is hard on them. But again, when you don't have those incentives, I think your achievers might underachieve a bit and not always push themselves as far as they possibly could. So there's a flip side, but I miss that competitive culture. You also don't have access to a bunch of sports in school like we are used to, especially in from primary school level. You can join a school team for tennis, rugby, swimming, cricket, netball, field hockey. Depending on the school you're in, there's plenty of options, chess, drama, choir. There's so many things you can take part in, and it's free. You just need to buy the gear, obviously. Whereas the schools here do not offer those extracurricular activities. It is something you need to pay for and join a club. So that is another thing that I miss about the schools in South Africa compared to the schools here. I believe in high school this changes a little bit. But all that said about the Canadian school system, the kids do learn things. My kid is writing, reading, telling me new things. So she is definitely making progress. The kids are going through college, becoming professionals. So it must be working. I'm probably just not used to the system. One thing I do enjoy about the school systems here, it's very inclusive. All cultures are made to feel welcome. Every holiday, whether it is Hanukkah, Christmas, Diwali, It's not like they force the kids to celebrate another religion or anything like that, but some of the parts outside the celebration they take part in. So they get to respect other cultures and learn about other cultures, which I think is a good thing. As to South African schools, very Christian based. I am a Christian myself, but admittedly, I think people that might be Muslim, or depending on what school you end in, you sort of always excluded from those cultural things. Now, one of the things that gets everybody, and I think this includes Canadians, the long, dark, cold, wet or snowy winter months. It gets me every year, with the days getting shorter and shorter already. Suddenly at the start of November, the time gets shifted by an hour, and suddenly your sunset goes from 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. and it gets earlier and earlier as you get closer to the winter solstice. November and December are particularly cold and wet months in Vancouver, and you have to be careful not to slip into depression during this time. For me, getting outside and exercising really helped, especially going to the slopes for skiing. What I do enjoy during this time are all the festive lights that go up as soon as Halloween is done. It really brightens up the nights, and I don't think you can find a street without a well-decorated, well-lit house. Some even staying up until February, mostly due to people too lazy to take it down. Now, the banking system in Canada, I have plenty of likes and dislikes after these 3 years. I think if you qualify for a credit card, it is important to have one when you are in Canada. It is free of charge, unless, of course, you don't pay your balance in time and you have to pay interest. But if you are disciplined, you pay your balance in time, you get quite a bit of rewards back depending on the card. It can be cashback, it can be points. My main card works in cashback awards and pays out once a year, and every December I probably get between $500 and $700 back into my account. And this is for money I just had to spend to buy groceries, flights, accommodation, whatever. It's just for using my money I would have used anyway. I'm getting $500 to $700 back at the end of the year, which is more than a lot of savings accounts can do. The thing I really don't like about banking here is that they still make use of checks, like physical checkbooks. It really surprised me when I moved to a first world country and they're still making use of checks. I think the last time I had to use a check was as a 16-year-old lifesaver in South Africa, as they paid our salary that way. But the next year, the checks basically got cancelled and nobody used it anymore. And I'm not even sure if it's possible to still get a physical checkbook in South Africa. Over here, my rent, I have to submit in future dated checks, as well as the before and after school care. And plenty of other services require you to submit a check for some reason. Yeah, a lot of times when you get money back or a refund, it is in the form of a check, which is very strange and outdated in this day and age. The good thing the financial system offers here are plenty of tax-free savings accounts or tax-deductible investments, which you can use to save up for a down payment on a house, or for your kids' college education, or just for your own savings. Lastly, housing. BC, and specifically Vancouver, is silly expensive, especially for families. I think for a single person or a young professional couple, it is much easier entering the housing market, where a single bedroom cardboard box can be $600,000 and up. A freestanding 3-bedroom family home in Vancouver that is probably only worth the ground it stands on will easily fetch $1.2 million. For me at least, that makes for a bleak housing outlook. The rental market is just as off the rails, with 2-bedroom apartments in Vancouver starting at $3,000 per month. Unfortunately, I don't see the situation becoming better anytime soon, rather it will become worse. If, however, you are moving to a smaller town or a less desirable city in Canada, you can easily buy a home spending $3,000 or less a month. Now, I've said many negative things, but there are also a lot of wonderful things about Canada. No, it is not completely crime-free, but you do feel safe, and I've gotten used to not having burglar bars in front of my windows, safety gates, or armed response. Although South Africans are extremely adaptable, and most now see power interruptions as a normal part of life, it is nice knowing you've got water and power security. The thing after this time I miss most about home Yes, I still call SA home, are the people and how they pull together regardless of all their political differences. I also miss all the friendly faces and of course the comfortable climate. So regardless of what the future holds, South Africa will always be home in my heart. So where do I stand? Am I staying? Am I going? The short answer, I'm still not convinced that Canada is our forever home. The next year or two will be very telling. As we become citizens in 2024, it will be pointless making any hasty decisions now. There are also some work restrictions for myself which may weigh into the decision, and I will have to do plenty of introspection this coming year. Now, there are many that will say moving to Canada is worth all the longing and hardship in the long run, but I do not believe it is a one-size-fits-all, and many people do return to South Africa after spending many years here, even if it's just to retire in a more affordable country with a favorable exchange rate. I would recommend listening to people that has gone through the immigration process, and be careful of advice given by people that's only telling you positive things about the country, as every place has pros and cons. Evaluate your own reasons for wanting to immigrate and be honest with yourself with what you are willing to put up with. For those that has just started the journey and are possibly being hit by many challenges, I would say give it some time. We told ourselves at least 3 years, especially considering the circumstances we left in. If it is not for you, potentially you can still have a Canadian passport at the end of it all, should you have a change of heart. It definitely isn't an easy decision or journey. You're brave to do it, and don't let anybody tell you you're running away or taking an easy way out. At the end of the day, it is your life, your family, and you need to make decisions that are right for you. So that's my story. Please post some questions down below in relation to this, or if there's anything else you would like me to discuss, post it below and I'll try and make a video about it. I think for 2024, my resolution will be to be a bit more active on this channel, so any ideas are welcome. Thank you for those that stuck with me. I really appreciate it. Stay safe, have a blessed Christmas, and a prosperous 2024. Have a good one. Cheers.